Hey guys, we're back with the New England Patrats and their members. We have Cleffy and Alex here. Say hello, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and start with their draft analysis here. So in the first round, they went ahead. They took Clefable, then went Arcanine, Rillaboom, Inteleon, Runerigus, Caparaja, Manectric, Drifloon, Beware, and Morgrem. So right off the bat, we gave their synergy grade. We gave you guys an A. Main reason was we see right off the bat, this is an incredibly versatile fire, water, grass core that you have here. Um, you have the Clefable next to it with redirection. So you have all these things that you can either go, okay, we're either going to go heavy Inteleon, we can go heavy Rillaboom this match and actually put out decent damage with the Rillaboom because it has good offensive stat plus grassy terrain to boost its stab attacks. And then Arcanine, obviously no slouch. You can either that being offensive or defensive. You can run a defensive set with Snarl. You can have Morning Sun. You can have Will-O-Wisp. You can run special if you want. You can have a physical set. Plus, you have a great ability with Intimidate. And then you have the Trick Room mode that you guys went for in rounds 5 and 6. This is stuff that obviously, Cleffy, you're very familiar with. You ran this last year with Runerigus, Caparaja. Something that was worked very, very well for you and your partner Jeremy last year. And then we see other picks too, like the Drifloon, the Beware, and the Morgrem, along with the Manectric. The Morgrem was something that also came around, that you guys had last year, that you guys are taking this year again. So hopefully we're going to see some nice stuff coming out of that this time. So overall, we gave your synergy an A. We really like the way that this draft looks on paper, and you guys are definitely going to be a tough team to prepare for.
As for your threat level, this was one of those teams. It kind of reminds me of Doesn't Clicks draft a little bit. Its strength, I think, comes more from its synergy than how threatening individual mons are or pairs. So might dig into you guys a little bit here with on the threat level, but just know even if your threat level grade isn't the greatest, a lot of that is made up for by the strength of your synergy, which we both felt was very, very good. But as far as your threats go, there's not a lot here that I'm seeing that's going to end up being a real heavy hitter. Especially, we were kind of expecting to see that a little bit, especially since you drafted Clefable first. But obviously there's a lot of mons here that can that have decent damage output. Rillaboom is obviously going to put out a lot of damage with Grassy Glide. The priority is definitely very threatening. Its other coverage is okay, but you can there's definitely some stuff that it's going to struggle against. Mostly grass resists, because even if it's getting a super effective hit, it's not stab. You're not necessarily getting knockouts with it. Inteleon does have sweeping potential, especially because it does get max airstream. But it's not really a setup mon. Max airstream's not stab, unfortunately, so it might be a little bit harder just to sweep with that than some other setup max airstream Pokemons or some flying type max airstream users. Runerigus and Caparaja, obviously something that you used last season, Cleffy. We did see some weakness policy bulldoze shenanigans from you last season with that particular pair, which can be very threatening. But it also it does require setup, and it is that is kind of your only trick room mode. So if you're going up against other Pokemon that maybe speed tie with those two at base 30, or even underspeed those two, something like a Torkoal or even a Hatterene, I imagine stuff like that might pose a bit of a threat to your Trick Room mode. So overall, you do have some threats for sure, but we think that the strength of your draft comes more from your synergy. As for your draft order, we felt it was decent, especially with the fire, water, grass core that you guys got. You got them all in a row. That was good. You didn't wait to fill them out in later rounds and maybe miss a piece that you wanted. So that's good. Um, but again, coming back to the Clefable, we feel like maybe the Clefable might be a little bit wasted here, just because we're wondering if there are any Pokemon here that are going to be able to have enough damage output to make Clefable's time on the field redirecting moves actually worth it. And again, going back to your Trick Room mode, it is a little bit limited. You have one setter and one sweeper, and then I am a little bit curious about the Beware pick. That's something I might want to ask you guys about. And then the Morgrim also was an interesting pick for me, because I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, Cleffy, I think you mentioned that last year you didn't bring it very much, or didn't bring it at all. So I'm wondering how you might end up using it this year, especially since you have some of the same pieces. So for your draft order, we gave you guys a B.
Yeah, and your overall team grade came out to a B. This one was actually a really tough one for us because we actually liked a lot of the picks, but when we seen them and we saw them on paper, we were really ecstatic. But as we started to think about it a little bit more, we started to see that like there may be some issues in finishing games.
Yes. And
you may start off strong, you may be able to get your strategy up, but this in VGC these cores work out well because it's 4-on-4, but in multi-battle where it's 6v6, it can be a little tough to finish out games with this. Not saying that you guys aren't going to do well. I think you guys are more than capable players, and with an incredibly balanced team like this, you guys are able to you guys can put out the offense and should be able to win your games. But I think it's not going to be as easy as some other teams that we've seen where they've clearly set up to where it's like we're just going to blow through teams and we're going to force them to prepare for 3 or 4 different things and see if maybe they can guess right. Now, that also means that, they're easier to prepare for. So if their opponent is able to guess what mode they're going to run, they counter lead correctly, or they prep correctly to where it's not that much of a big deal that this is going, that, they brought something that's really threatening, they might lose those matches. Whereas with you guys, even if you lead wrong, you have the tools, you have the ability to maneuver and swap in and out and maybe be able to pull out a win in the end. So, like I said, it was one of the things that was really tough for us, and that's probably why, it's you're gonna hear us heaping praise on you while at the same time you're gonna see like a lowish grade, because we really feel that like you could either go 8-1, 9-1 like you guys did last year, or you can end up 5-5, 6-4, and not like blowout, like just really close, 3 games that may have just gotten really close, and then a loss that you guys just got unlucky in, because that's kind of the game that we play, right? And so it's one of those things where we could see this going either way. So we gave you guys a B, and we thought that while the team overall looks solid in this format of multi-battle, we wonder if it's going to be able to close teams out the way that like we foresee it might on paper.
Yeah. As for the pros, we talked about the Firewater Grass Core a little bit. I think not only is it the second best Firewater Grass Core in the league, I think it's actually a close second only to Doesn't Click. I actually really like the Arcanine, Rillaboom, and Teleon. I think they can end up working really, really well together. And especially if and when you're going for a more defensive style of play, despite what we said about how Clefable fits on this team, it is definitely going to help out with that core in particular. Cleffy, we know that you're definitely very familiar with Runeriga's Copperajah. Your Copperajah put in a lot of work last season, so just your familiarity with that mode, I think, is definitely going to be a big advantage to your team, considering you have the exact same ones again for your Trick Room mode. And then we also noticed that you do have a wide range of speed stats. You've got your slow mode in Runerigus Caparaja. You've got your mons that are clearly very fast in Inteleon with base 120 speed, Manectric base 105, and then you've got some middling speed Pokemon. I believe Beware is base 60. Clefable I believe is also 60. Rillaboom 85, and Arcanine is kind of in between that middling speed and fast mode at base 95. So I think you have a really good distribution of speeds there that'll allow for more versatility. So it's not all fast mons that get beat by Trick Room. It's not all slow mons that can't do anything if Trick Room doesn't get set up. You've got a lot of options there.
Yeah. So the cons were mainly that we really didn't see a ton of damage output, and what we mean by that is not just base stats, not just being able to get a wood hammer off in grassy terrain. Like, of course, that's big raw damage, but we're talking about staying power, being faster than stuff, being able to blow stuff up. We're talking about things in the area of like having a mon just sweep through in 6-0 teams, which is something that we did see a little bit last year that helped a lot of teams out in just figuring out, hey, you know what, we could just lead this, we could blow through teams. We don't really see a lot of that with you. We see a lot of balance, which is good, but not really a lot of 6-0 potential. We think these games are going to be close. We think, you could come out winners, and we think that there are going to be times where, just like when you guys went against the Denny's last year, a couple of things don't go your way, it goes to time, and you end up with a loss. And when you're constantly in close games like that, eventually your luck is either going to swing one way or the other. And that's the only thing that we're really kind of looking at is with your fear of damage output here. And the other issue is that where you guys do have damage dealers, like the Inteleon, like the Caparaja, they're a little bit frail. The Caparaja obviously has a massive defense stat. We're not saying that.
HP.
Or HP, sorry. But its defenses aren't that great. And, the Inteleon, obviously, like we said before, it's kind of a glass cannon. The Rillaboom, as much as I see the potential for it, it's, when you build around something with like a Firewater Grass Core like that, you're really using it to pivot. You're really using it to kind of chip stuff down with Grassy Glide, maybe pick up a few KOs here and there. But you don't want it to just sit out there on the field and for more than like 3 or 4 turns, because that's normally not what Rillaboom likes to do. It likes to hit once, switch out, get switched back in, fake out, hit again with another Grassy Glide, and kind of likes to move around. So I wouldn't really consider that too much of a damage dealer. And the Arcanine, it definitely has the potential to do it, but I also know that most of the time that Arcanine is probably going to be brought, it's mostly going to be a supporting type Pokemon. And so with that, that's where more we're talking about when we say you have frail damage dealers, is the ones that are clearly offensive really don't have the defensive stats to hold off longer than a couple of turns. And I feel that, like, next to Clefable, who can kind of be bulky, you just have to build it a certain way. You're either really building it really special, or you're building it really defensive. But if they hit you on one of the defenses that you're not invested in, now all of a sudden you lose your redirection and you're kind of put in a tough spot. The Trick Room is limited to 1 sweeper. Granted, that sweeper has tons of great coverage, but it's something that definitely should be noted, because when you're preparing for a Trick Room mode and you only have to predict for 1, you can kind of figure out, okay, well, we just bring this, we throw room service on it, we underspeed the Caparaja, and bam, we beat it. And again, the Clefable, it just seemed like it was a little bit of a waste of a slot without some clear heavy hitters. And maybe that was because of the position that you guys took it, taking it number 1 overall, taking it number 1 in your draft, and showing that you guys really are hard on this redirection, you're ready for it. We were really expecting the Porygon Z pick to come out, something like, I don't know, maybe Durant, maybe even if Durant's not, but something that really was just going to put out hard and fast offense. Something that we saw with the Sadistic Seniors when they took NDD first in their first part of their draft, and then came back with Porygon Z, because they knew that they could have the best redirection user in the format next to a high-powered offensive type and just blow through teams. And I thought for sure that's what you guys were going to do because, in my opinion, Clefable, and Matt's opinion too, Clefable's the second best. It's very good. It's a very good follow me user. It has Unaware. It has Magic Guard, right? Magic Guard.
Yeah.
And it has decent defenses too. Good typing. It's a great redirector. So we were a little bit disappointed to see that you followed it up with Arcanine Rillaboom in your next two picks. And I understand you guys had a plan, but that's just from our point of view. We really thought that offensive mode was going to come out.
And to be fair, I think that our point of view is probably a factor here, considering we had so much success with Clefable next to big Dynamax sweepers last season.
Yeah.
So there's something to be said for that too.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean that that's all that Clefable can do. Clefable has such a wide move pool that to just even classify it down as only a redirector is a little bit unfair too. Even though that's where we found the most success with it, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's where you guys are going to find the most success with it. So now that we're finished with that, we're just going to move on to some questions really quick. And I'll go ahead and handle the first one and ask it to Cleffy, if you don't mind. But did you end up getting your preferred Fire, Water, Grass core? Obviously, this is a very good Fire, Water, Grass core, but was this pre-draft what you guys were looking at? Would you guys come in going Arcanine, Rillaboom, Inteleon on the board? Count it. What was it?
Not exactly. So originally what we were looking at was maybe picking up something like Clefable, Arcanine, Rillaboom, Inteleon, and Magnezone. But what kind of came as a surprise to us was that Rillaboom was still available come round 3. So we talked it over, we decided maybe we should pick this thing up, and we kind of reworked our draft to build something more around that.
Just to clarify, I think you said Rillaboom twice there. You meant your original plan involved Thwackey, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, well that makes sense. And then of course, when you're making 1S and 3 A tier picks, in the first few rounds, yeah, you definitely have to talk it over and rework your draft. And I think that was definitely a risk that ended up paying off for you guys because this is something that we found with other teams that their teams are very top heavy, especially if they ran the draft the way that you ran it. If they went an S and 3 A's, their teams are very top heavy. Your guys' team is not top heavy. We can't throw that criticism out to you. Your Caparaja last year was able to get near to the top of the leaderboard. The Runerigas played a huge part in that. The Beware has a lot of potential. The Morgrem, has a lot of, it's a Swiss Army knife, great prankster user. You don't have a top-heavy draft at all. So, that it was really impressive that you guys were able to go, we're gonna go an S and 3 A's and still manage to get a great Fire, Water, Grass core and fill out the rest of the team. Did you want to ask about Morgrem?
Yeah, this is again more directed at Cleffy, since Cleffy you played last season, and there are some pieces of this draft that you had last season as well. We touched on the Runerigas Caparaja, but the Morgrem is something that you also had last season that didn't really make too many appearances. I was just wondering if you could. Give us your thought process behind picking it this time, even though it didn't really do much for you last time around.
So last time, Jeremy and I drafted Indeedee F and Reshiram, and that sort of introduces a couple of issues with Morgrem. Part of it is just that because Reshiram is such a high-tiered threat, a lot of times people are going to prepare for it a lot more. And as a result, Jeremy and I tried to use it more as like a late game sweeper and stuff like that. And it can be kind of hard to actually like do the positioning that Morgrem wants to do in the middle of the game. With Indeedee, we oftentimes ended up using it as a lead just to kind of like, avoid some like chaoticism in what would happen in the first few turns and then, maneuver into like a reasonable mid game. But if you lead with Indeedee, that sets up psychic terrain. It kind of blocks a lot of what Morgrem can do with Prankster. So this season, we kind of have our tiers a bit less spaced out. So it's a bit harder to tell exactly what we're maybe wanting to go for, and people have to prepare for a broader range of leads. And we don't have psychic terrain anymore. In fact, we have grassy terrain. And so now we don't actually block ourselves from using Prankster.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair analysis. Your draft this time around is clearly much more balanced than it was last season. I think Morgrim definitely fits on this team a little bit better than your last one.
So Alex, quick question. You're the new player now on the New England Patrats. Jeremy was Cleffy's partner last year. We see a lot of Cleffy influence here with defensive types and stuff like that. But I have to ask, like, what influence did you have on this draft in general? Were there things that you came to Cleffy to and told him that you wanted to put your mark on the team? How was that?
So Rillaboom, so we started off Slacky first, and I thought Rillaboom has better stats, and however it costs more, but Rillaboom gives more offensive pressure to opposing teams, while Slacky doesn't have much offensive pressure at all. Let me see. I've also suggested
Well, I'm guessing.
for the fire type, we would think yeah, so Cleffy also asked me for fire type if we want to go. We had two options. We were going Arcanine or Instant, but Instant gives Partner Shot, which I really liked as a fire type, but Arcanine gives more offensive pressure and support. As a result, we decided to go to Arcanine because it gives lots of support and offensive and defensive attributes for a fire type. I think that's all I really contributed from the draft.
Would you say you're more of an offensive type player or more of a defensive type player?
I'm a more offensive type player.
Okay. So
I like to get as many KOs as possible while having redirection as well as a defensive backbone.
Okay. So I definitely can see your influence here, along with you guys and Cleffy, kind of coming in and balancing this out, because we do know that Cleffy likes to play defensively typically, which sometimes doesn't hold up very well in a multi-battle format because the timer tends to play such a huge factor. But we can definitely see that, you know, your offensive mind and your offensive presence has brought a lot of balance to this draft, and I think that's something that's definitely worth noting. Do we have any other questions?
I think that's all we got. So, did you guys have any final thoughts on your draft? Anything else you wanted to say, or any critiques of our analysis?
Is it alright if I go first, Alex?
Yes, sure.
So one of the things that was brought up was about timer stalling and whether or not our team would be able to win under those kind of conditions. Which one of the sets last year that we had was against the Diabolical Dedens, where they were successfully able to timer stall us. What I think is like kind of interesting about that point is that the Diabolical Dedens were actually the ones that had Arcanine and Rillaboom last year. And I think their team in general was maybe a bit more defensive than ours. So while I do think that you can potentially stall out some bulky teams, I think that bulky teams also have the resources to push for those end games. And even though we may not have like one sweeper that can just like muscle through a team and tear through it like butter, I think we have a lot of resources to generally outvalue our opponents into that kind of an end game.
Absolutely, and like we said, your synergy and the variability that you have with the core of your Pokemon where you can go several different ways with, Arcanine, with Rillaboom, not so much with Inteleon, but with the Clefable as well. With those three, you can go either offensive, defensive, support. Like, it depends on how the Clefable wants to be made. Like, obviously, you're going to put Follow Me on it, but it had 4 move slot syndrome with Matt and I all the time. There were so many things you wanted to throw on there. And that absolutely will give you a lot of value in being able to put yourself into those positions. So that is definitely a good point. The only thing that I will say is another thing about the Dedennis too is they did have a little bit of an issue closing out matches as well. And while I do think that now the Rillaboom is much better because they're not just using it as a fake out user and a pivot. Now you are able to use it as a terrain setter. You're able to use it as a priority stab grass user. There's a lot of different things that Rillaboom does for you that definitely puts a little bit more offense on your side than that the Dedennis had last year when they had it. I will also say that you guys not having a U tier in the restroom kind of does 2 things for you. It opens up your draft a lot to make it a lot more balanced and not as top heavy, which is something that we talked about. But one of the things that benefit you, which also benefit us in a lot of ways, is teams prep so hard for this one threat that you're able to almost counter them and go, ha, we're going to catch you and trick them. Ha, we're going to catch you with, we had Keldeo. We're going to catch you with this, because they're so scared of the Mew, they're so scared of the restroom that they over prep for this and we catch them off guard. So while you definitely may have added a lot of variables and like a lot of I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here, but like when you guys have like a lot of different things a lot of Pokemon that can do a lot of different things, you guys don't have that one threat that goes, we have to prep for that, which we'll see how it works out in the draft for you. You guys are very capable players, and with a balanced team like this, even though it might come close, honestly, a lot of the times it comes down to who's the better player, who's going to make that switch that's going to save the Pokemon, keep it in the back, so that way it can sweep later. That maybe your average player just sacks off, and that's one of the things that you guys definitely do have. So I think that's a great point where, while you guys may be going for a defensive play style, it has been known to work a little bit, and now you guys have a little bit more offense. Was there anything that you wanted to say, Alex?
I agree that our draft is a bit frail, but having like screens from Morgan, having support with screens and redirection from Morgan and Clefable, I think it's doable to make
Absolutely.
our defense.
It's definitely doable, yeah.
Yes.
And even if your draft looks a little bit more defensive, like it's not impossible for you to go on the offensive and do well with that kind of mode.
No.
So it's obviously we think the biggest strength of your draft comes from the synergy and the way everything's going to end up working well together. And I think I would not be surprised to see you guys with this draft in playoffs. It's very solid, pretty much all the way through.
Yeah, this is one of the few teams that I really don't see you guys maybe making 1 or 2 transactions based on like matchups and stuff like that. But the core of your team is going to stay the same. The core of your team is going to remain threatening, and maybe you bring the same 4 that go to every single match. I think every team has that 4 that are going to come to every single match. You're not going to run your bottom 6, like it's almost never going to happen. But those spots where you guys are going to be able to swap in the 1 and the 2 spots where you have flexes, I think is really gonna help a lot. That kind of either turns the tide and goes, ha, we were able to put out enough offense on them because we had X, Y, and Z, or something like, dang, we messed up. We should have brought Beware because it would have gone better in this matchup, So and stuff like that, is gonna happen whether it's in draft league or in BGC. But did you guys have any other questions for us? Any concerns about the report card or the draft? No, nothing.
I don't think so.
There's a lot that I could probably talk about, but I don't know how long you guys want this interview to
Well, this one's it's already a little bit of a long one, but if you have valid points, we're always willing to hear them. But I think either way, I honestly, not saying that anything you have to say is not valid. Obviously, we think it is, but you guys have a great team. Let's just be real. Nobody's trying to say otherwise here. We think that you guys have a very good team. It's definitely going to win some games. I'm pretty sure you guys are going to be able to get into playoffs. I'm confident that you guys are going to get into playoffs. I do think that with such a balanced team like this, it's going to come down to 1 to 2 turns, and if one of those turns doesn't go your way, you end up. This isn't a best of 3. The best player doesn't always win. Unfortunately. So this is insurance policies to make sure that you can blow through teams that you're generally better than, and having an easy mode, quote unquote, to make sure you blow through those teams would have bumped it up a little bit. But like I said, the reality is that this is a great draft. I mean, you guys have a good team. You guys are great players. You guys are going to start off good. You guys are going to be fine. So I wouldn't worry too much about it.
Cleffy, if you'd like, why don't you wrap it up with a couple of concise points for us?
You want me to wrap up concise points?
Yeah, if you had a couple more things to say, just why don't you just throw them out and wrap it up for us?
Okay. So one is just our damage output. Like I said, we don't have one thing that's a huge threat, but we actually have the second highest attack stat out of all the drafts and the 4th highest special attack, which, again, it's more than base stats, but I still think that's pretty significant in terms of the spread. Just in general, I really like our draft. I stand by more or less all of the picks, and I'm excited for this season.
All right.
Excellent.
Well, that wraps it up with the New England Patrats here. They're going to have a great season, I'm sure. And next, we're going to bring it to the SoCal Skarmories, who also had a pretty interesting draft. We're going to talk about it with them. So stay tuned. Thank you.